we had Sigmund call in and has been waiting on the line for about an hour already.
Awesome. Well, thanks for calling in early, Sigmund.
Yeah, Sigmund, what would you like to talk about?
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys, and a Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, of course, to everyone of you. I hope you guys have had a nice Christmas and a New Year.
Some lovely, quiet, chill. It was lovely. It was nice.
Yeah. We cooked together and made a drink and enjoyed it from home.
Yes, we were being very good.
Yeah.
A bit different. Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to call in and talk about couple of things, I guess. But first of all, obviously, like usually when I have like philosophical discussions, right, atheism is generally defined kind of differently. It's not that I hate your definition. I'm just saying that generally, for practical purposes, it's much easier when atheism is a position than when it's just an absence.
I'm sure it is for you.
Personal. Sorry, what?
I'm sure it is for you.
Yeah. What's interesting is
in general it's easier, but I mean I have no problem with any other definition. I don't think it's like it's a semantic problem. It's not like a philosophical problem. So instead of like calling in and saying that atheism is self-defeating, and then having to defend something like how can a private psychological state be self-defeating, I would like to talk about other views that you guys seem to positively hold instead of having absence of. And let's see if that ties into why you are secularists or atheists. Does that sound fair?
So you're going to bring up a position, see if we agree with it, and if we do agree with it, why?
Well, I think that there's a couple of other positions that you do hold positively, right? As opposed to like having an absence of, right?
That's an interesting switch on Talk Heathen. Usually we want to ask what the callers believe and why. So let's do a quid pro quo. You ask us a question and then we'll ask you.
Okay, I'm a Christian myself. I think I told that to the call screener. Yeah. Okay. So like, my question is, you guys seem to hold. I mean, I'm not as certain because I think I saw Eric talk about this once. I'm not sure I've seen V, but you guys seem to hold to some form of naturalistic philosophy. Would that be correct?
Well, if we're going against the philosophical versus colloquial definitions, then we want to make that distinction here. I would not call myself a philosophical naturalist. I am a methodological naturalist. So that's the distinction
that's
there.
Fair. Okay, good. All right. So so that's what I wanted to get out of the way. So my next question would be, as I guess methodological naturalism, how do you avoid, let's say, something like determinism? Like how do you get out of determinism?
They're not mutually exclusive.
Also, we don't necessarily get out of it.
Yeah, I don't.
You would say you hold to determinism.
Not necessarily. I don't think I have enough information either way, but I'm not diametrically opposed to it.
Okay. So, but I do think that the problem comes up with this, right? Because it seems like a lot of naturalists don't have a way to get out of determinism. As in,
why do we need to?
Well, because determinism seems to entail something like lack of free will because of the consequence argument and the no forking paths argument.
But isn't so? Let's slow down just a little bit. That sounds like an appeal to consequences. If determinism, if naturalism, then no free will. It doesn't actually invalidate it. It just means that, okay, we've got more to think about. But I have no problem with the idea that I have no free will.
Yeah, but the problem, of course, is that without free will, you would have no agency, right? And without agency, you can't hold any beliefs.
That's not true.
What is not true?
So it depends on how you understand and talk about agency. If you're defining agency as something that inherently has free will, then no, because I obviously disagree with that idea.
What's the distinction? What's the distinction that can be drawn between agency and free will?
Sure. So when you're talking about free will, colloquially, generally, it's kind of this libertarian view of free will that we have this ability to make choices and choose between one thing and another versus, I think, your autonomy, right? We were talking about autonomy?
Agency.
Agency.
So we were talking about agency, yeah.
Okay. I think that one could.
How can you be an agent? How can you be an agent without the principle of alternative possibility?
Well, I think that we're testing for that with the Turing test all of the time. I think that you can effectively have what we would describe as agency and manufacture it. We're on our way to getting there. I don't think that we're some special, thing. I think that we're meat machines essentially. So who cares? I don't understand why.
Here's the thing that I don't understand about this argument is, can you fly, Sigmund? Can you jump off a building and fly?
I can't.
Okay, that is you cannot do that. You are determined not to do that, right? Does that impose on your free will? Like the fact that we cannot.
That's not determinism, though. That's not determinism.
Well, I realize that I'm making an analogy here. I'm saying that because
no, it's not a good analogy because determinism is the thesis.
I know what determinism is. I'm not talking about determinism right now. I'm talking about the idea of agency and free will. You do not have the agency to fly. Does that impose on your free will?
The idea of not having agency to fly is not a coherent thing, right? Agency is the abstract principle of autonomous beings.
Coherent. I've read Superman comics.
Yeah. No.
Well,
how are you defining agency then?
Agency is the abstract principle that autonomous beings are capable of acting by themselves.
Well.
Okay.
Well,
how on earth does that?
You think that?
How does that impose? How is that opposed to determinism? If everything that is determining your actions is held within yourself, you are reacting to your internal and external stimuli autonomously. Therefore, you have agency.
Let me explain, right? Determinism is the thesis that all events are caused by antecedent conditions, okay? So as von Inwagen shows by the consequence argument, since quote-unquote agents don't actually have control over neither the laws of nature nor the antecedent conditions, they can have no control, I guess, over the consequences that those conditions bring about.
Whoa! Stop! Right there. Let's say we live in a world where there's absolutely no free will and somebody's walking around killing people. Are you saying they do not have, there should be no consequences for that person because they don't have free will?
Okay, this is just equivocation, right? Consequences, you're just equivocating on the colloquial consequence versus the consequence that any effect brings when we talk about methodology, right? So, for example,
so give me an example.
Okay, the consequence of an action is something like me dropping down the computer and the computer as a consequence of the action breaking. That's what I mean. So what von Inwagen argues is that if there is no forking path, basically, according to determinism, right, you couldn't have done otherwise on any of the.
It's just a line of dominoes.
Any of the choices.
But
basically, I think Eric gets it. So the problem is if we negate the principle of alternate possibility, right?
Sigmund,
and it seems like, yeah.
I got a quick question for you.
Yes.
Is Sigmund your real name?
How is that relevant to what I'm trying to explain?
Well, I just want to know if this is the same person who called in as Canadian Catholic using a different name.
Because I don't understand, right? I mean, I'm just trying to explain a hard concept, and I'm being interrupted for unrelated reasons. Like, you surely should understand the frustration I must be feeling, right? Because I'm trying my best to explain a complicated concept.
Is that a yes?
I'd say that's a yes.
I don't understand what the relevance of my name is, right? So why can't you engage with the arguments?
Here's the thing, Sigmund. We want to make sure that we are promoting honest conversations. And a really good way to determine if somebody is an honest interlocutor is if they are honest with our call screeners and they're honest with us about who they are, so we can continue conversations with that basis of knowledge of that person. There are people who call in and we have a continuing dialogue with them because we know that they have called in before. Calling in under different names and pretending to be different people is dishonest and throws your argument under the bus a little bit.
Yeah, if you lived in a third world country and it was important for your safety, then that's understandable.
that's just a genetic fallacy, right? I was in the middle of an argument and you stopped me at an unrelated point, and now I lost.
How many times have we had arguments with you, Sigmund? Multiple times, and you keep calling in with different ideas, and you never repeat our conversations. You never come back to previous points. So I really don't see a point in continuing conversations with you, because you're just going to call in another week with something completely different under another name.
Yeah, I mean, really, for me, the thing is it feels like you come in with an onion and we keep peeling back layers, but we never actually address the underlying assumptions. And the underlying assumptions, if I were to respond to today, is that the idea of free will is bad, right? Or no, sorry,
No,
the idea that we don't have free will is bad.
And therefore, we cannot be naturalists because for some reason it's, here's the thing. It would be an interesting conversation if I could trust that we would be able to continue it with you next week, but I can't do that. So we may have to let you go. If you want to keep calling in under the same name and continue a conversation with us, feel free to do that. But we've been pretending we haven't been recognizing you for the sake of, being polite, but we've noticed that you called in over and over. The audience knows. We all know at this point. So maybe it's best just to be upfront, put our cards on the table, and maybe call back next week with your real name or a name you want to stick to, and we can continue these conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's chickening out, right? I mean, you're just getting cornholed and you're just chickening out of the conversation, right? I mean,
feel free to think that if it makes you feel better.
That's cute.
Bye, Sigmund.
You know what I noticed? Calls worth having don't have pejorative statements like that,
Here's the thing. We were trying to have a decent conversation, and we try. Every once in a while, someone might call in. They forgot the name that they used last time. They don't want to use their real name. That's fine. But if you consistently call into the show under different names, that makes us doubt if you're really willing to have a good conversation with us. We want to build these relationships. We have people call in again and again, and we walk with them through their process of thinking these things out. If you're going to call in and just pretend you've never heard of us, and we've caught you in a lie before, right? You've been like, oh, I've never called the show. Come on.
Well, he didn't do that this time. He didn't
Not
do that
this time.
And really, ultimately, some conversations, the format is such that you can sit down for hours and hours and hours and work things out. But the way this is positioned is some kind of gotcha. And really, we want to talk with people. We want to engage with them. We're bringing ourselves to the conversation. We want to make sure that the other people are too.
Right.
And it's not just this stack of, but
also, before we jump into another call, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, I'm a methodological naturalist. I believe you are too. Mm-hmm. And the only way that you could debunk naturalism by saying it requires determinism is by doing two things. First, demonstrate that that is true, that naturalism requires determinism. And then two, demonstrate conclusively that determinism is not what we experience. And then you have a solid case. But until you can do both those things, that's an argument from consequence. That's saying, I don't want to believe that I live in a deterministic world. I like imagining that I have free will and agency in the way I define it. And therefore, you can't be right. And that is just a bad argument. And I don't care how many 5-syllable, 6-syllable words you throw out at me. It's still a bad argument.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That actually makes me want to do at some point, we're going to need to screen the story of Anywhere USA or Anytown USA. It is a wonderful, wonderful old animation that kind of goes over some of those ideas, or it's a good jumping off point anyway.